Well, first, thank you all for inviting me to the forum, for getting a chance to meet some of the people that crafted those questions, for getting me to think very specifically about the ways that I'd like to be an advocate for children in the district, children with disabilities, and for other people. Um, so um, what I said was I'd love to have the district try to build and create a peer network for people. One of the things that's been really essential for me to learn about the process is having a peer network. Clearly my peer network wasn't big enough to actually tell me about VELA, so that's life. Also, I think another issue is the way that special ed communications is treated in a special, exceptional sort of way. And I think finding ways to include discussions of special ed, discussions of 504s, discussion of IEPs in the general communications coming out of the district, coming out of principals' offices, coming out of teachers' places, would do a great deal to sort of like destigmatize and centralize and include kids and parents with SPED. And I hate that I'm using the acronym, but I'm just going to use that for now. And then the third thing, I'm in agreement, I think, with a number of people that SPED issues need to be elevated above where they are, either speaking directly to the board or at sort of like that associate superintendent level, so that we don't have situations where COVID-19 plans are made and then people are like, oh yeah, special ed students, what do we need to do? And more than that, sort of like planning with sort of like the most vulnerable students and families at the center, and then building out from there, because the rest of us, or some of us who are there, can find resources to be able to survive the crisis. So centering vulnerability in policy making. And that's just way vague, but I think it can be done. Oh, and my own experience, oh, that's it. Do I have more time?
You have 2 seconds. But I'm sure we'll get to hear about that.
Abled. Okay, that's my statement.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, and now we'll hear from Ofelia Zapata.
Good evening. Thank you for this evening. My name is Ofelia Zapata. I have been a community leader for 30 years. I started at Sanchez Elementary. I was pushed by my daughters to come to parent meetings, and because I'm visually impaired, I never felt like I could contribute anything. But I started attending with so much fear because my whole education experience was a bad experience. I would always run into people. I would always cry because I couldn't read my books or see the chalkboard. I didn't know how to talk to people about what my issues were. So I just cried all the time. And so as I began to find my voice, I realized that there's so many parents that are still out here that have those same fears I have, because they don't know how to advocate for their children. They try, but they are squashed on, they are disrespected. And so I'm just real tired. There's 3 generations of students with special needs in my family, and it doesn't change. And I just don't understand how the district can get away with this for this long. So I am running because I have firsthand experience of dealing with a lot of issues within the district that I had to learn how to advocate for, and taught other parents how to advocate for themselves. And so that needs to continue. We need to have people at the table who have the expertise, knowledge of how their children learn. And so I am here to help in that area of community engagement, advocacy, learning the political process to make change happen, and to hold the district accountable. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now District 3, Kevin Foster.
So thank you for this evening and for the opportunity to kind of be positioned as learners. I love the way the forums have been rolling out towards really candidate potential trustee education. I really appreciate that. I'd love to see that from the board level, the clear articulation of a vision, and this sounds very loosey-goosey, but it's a cliche, but it's important. The 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 clarity of vision that says we serve all students excellently, inclusively from where they are, and that it is our responsibility to figure out how to provide the resources to make that happen, and including staffing, including training, including what goes on in individual classrooms. So clarity at the top level, and then holding the superintendent accountable for the appropriate hiring, the appropriate staffing, the appropriate professional development, which sounds all like, okay, yeah, that sounds like pie in the sky, but that's actually what the trustees are supposed to be doing. We do that best as responsive listeners, which is to say that we are in deep and constant and ongoing relationship with community, so that we are constantly getting the feedback and learning what's happening, both good and not good, so that we can then turn to the board level and say, how does that articulate with the vision? And to the extent that it doesn't, we need to be turning right to Dr. Elizalde and saying, okay, where do we go from here? Because these things aren't in place. So that's the board level work. All of that just makes intuitive sense. And the only tweak is that there is often the discouragement of trustees to get on the ground and to be talking to families, to talk to teachers, to talk to principals. That sounds counterintuitive, but it's actually sometimes the case. We have to be grounded constantly. In terms of personal experience, family members who had an IEP, and really, we've been through it as parents. My kids don't like to talk about it, and I respect that.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, and now we're going to go to District 5, and we'll start with Lynn Boswell.
Great, thank you for having this event. Thank you for having us here, and thank you for all the work that you guys both do. As a parent, as a student, this is not something I have personal experience with. The experience I have comes from people who have shared their experiences with me. And I have talked with so many friends about the process they've been through, either fighting to have an issue identified, or once they do, of working to just figure out how to navigate this very hard system, and of having, rather than finding a supportive environment in schools, finding something that too often feels adversarial. And again, I send people to VELA, and I send people now to the Coalition for Special Education Equity, because it is a community of people who is filling a need that really should be happening in our schools. Parents need to be given the information they need to be partners. And the district, I believe, very strongly needs to value that partnership, nurture that partnership, and support that partnership. I think that is what we all need for our kids, no matter what is there. I think anyone who's worked with me knows that I am not in it for my issue. I am there to figure out what's happening, to support other people, that I'm a listener and a learner. And that's what I will do with special education. That's what I will do with dual language. That's what I will do. I don't have a kid who plays football. I will do it with that. That's my mission and my role. And I think some real structural changes are needed. And I think real measurement of fidelity, making sure that any policy that's in place is followed, about all of this. Communication, the way families are engaged, and the way things roll out in our classrooms and in our schools for our students, and the supports that the staff get to. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lynn. And now we'll hear from Jennifer Littlefield.
Hi, thanks. I'm Jennifer Littlefield. I am a parent of 2 kids in AISD. They've been in District 5 for the last decade, at Patton and now at Small and Austin High. I am an attorney. I do policy work in my day job, and so that's really the approach that I bring to my volunteer work, serving on several boards, advisory boards in AISD, And my approach as a trustee is looking at that systemic change and the structural policy work that needs to be done. On my personal, personal SPED experiences, I have 2 kids on 504 accommodation plans and have been through the ups and downs of navigating the paperwork and transitions from elementary to middle school, and seeing how from school to school services are provided at disparate levels, and recognize that my experience has been a small fraction of what many parents struggle with across our district. In District 5, we have schools where our SPED services are working really well, and we have principals that are implementing great programs. And we also have places where we're really failing students. At Austin High, just this year, we've lost all the life skills teachers. And so we have kids showing up to a Zoom with no teacher. We have the theater teacher subbing in. We've got to get it together. We've got to fix this for our kids. Thanks.
Thank you, Jennifer. And Piper Nelson next.
Hi, my name is Piper Stege Nelson, and I am also running for AISD District 5. I am the mom of 2 elementary school kids here in AISD. I have a 3rd grader and I have a 5th grader. And I also am the Chief Public Strategies Officer at SAFE, which is the combination of Safe Place and Austin Children's Shelter. And one of the things about that work is that I have seen sort of the full range of issues that kids in AISD face as they're trying to get a good education. When I started this campaigning process and I started talking to parents across the district and certainly in District 5, there were certain things that just sort of kept rising up. And one of them is communication. And that's one of the reasons that I'm doing this, is that I'm a professional communicator and I understand how important that is, and how the district has really been struggling with communicating properly with families. But the other piece that kept coming up again and again and again was the special education piece. Whether I was talking to a parent who had a kid who was receiving special education services, whether I was talking to a teacher who was a special education teacher, whether I was talking to a parent who was just seeing kids who needed additional services and weren't getting with them, or a teacher who felt like they were ill-equipped. And it was really, it was very eye-opening that conversation after conversation after conversation, these concerns kept coming up, and they were issues that I didn't know about. And so I started doing more research, and I think there are a number of things the district needs to be doing around this. First of all, it seems as if we have not had a special education audit or strong look in quite some time. I think it's time for that again. In addition, we need to be doing a climate survey and really talking to parents and kids and communities about what's working and what is not working with special education. And we really need to be talking with those teachers that are leaving. One of the things I heard from teachers is that they get into, they start working with kids and they start forming strong relationships, and then they're transferred, or the kid is sent to another school, or whatever it is, and breaking that bond sometimes makes things even worse. And the last piece is the communication, and making sure that there are simply information about the special education services on the AIC website that are clear. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Piper. And now we'll move to District 8 candidates. Jared, will you get us started?
Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Jared Breckenridge. Many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with me, and I'm familiar with you. I've been a very strong advocate in our district for the past few years. And so basically, I'm ready to take the next step. I know that there's so many systemic issues in our city that we face, and I know that we need specific people on the school board to make that change possible. And so I bring the perspective as a former student of AISD, attending Campbell Elementary, Garcia, Pierce, Keeling, and LBJ last but not least. In addition to that, I came back and I started substituting for the past 3, going on 4 years now, 3-4 years. And so basically having that experience as a substitute teacher, getting to visit dozens of our campuses around our district, seeing what things we are doing well and what things we're not doing well, talking to the teachers and hearing their feedback. There's programs that are being implemented, and then once they start working for the teachers, then they're pulled, and it's they have to learn a new system and things like that. It's so many issues, and going to the school board meetings, I think really propelled me. Hearing time and time again the same speakers coming over and over again and pouring their hearts out about their child's education. These are the things that have prompted me to run for the school board. As it relates to special education, I also have experience in our classrooms as a special education educator. And what do I mean by that is, I've sat in the classrooms where the teacher doesn't have enough TAs to teach the students. And so, as we all know, if our teachers are being stretched very, very thin, right, and they're not being provided additional help, they're going to grow exhausted. And so our students are going to feel that pain. And that's oftentimes what do happen. Currently, though, I'm losing time, but I'm sure I can do that later on. I'm as a student teacher inside of one of our Title I campuses, and I'm seeing some special education issues as well. So I bring all of that, and I'm a very strong advocate, and that's what I'm looking forward to doing this November. Thank you.
Thank you, Jared. And next we'll go to Leticia Caballero.
Hello, thank you for having us this evening. My name is Leticia Moreno Caballero, and I really want to thank you all for sending out those questions early so that we could all have time to think about what was in those questions, time to reflect and reach out and really have a better understanding. I think it's been very, very helpful for me. So I want to thank you for hosting that and then allowing us that opportunity to learn more. I am a native Austinite. I went to Odom Elementary, Covington Middle School, and Bowie High School, and now I'm a mother of a graduate. And I've got 2 students that are Zooming from my house, and they're supposed to be a senior and a sophomore at Bowie High School as well. My connection with special ed is I've got a dear friend who son has special needs and was not receiving the services. She had a tremendously difficult time, and just being able to, listening to her and her journey and frustration. And this is a woman who's an attorney and knows all of the right words and all of the right acronyms, and just watching with all of the frustration that she was having on something that was seemingly so simple. They should have just served, gotten right with the programming, with the staffing, and do what's right by the students and what they deserve and what they need. And it was clear in just watching her go through that is obviously not happening. And I would really want the district to have an academic strategic plan that looks at what's happening across the district in all of these different schools. As we've heard, it's happening in different ways on different campuses. And so we really need to have a review of what's happening on our campuses and what, the prioritization of what needs to happen next. Thank you.
Thank you, Leticia. And Noelita, we'll hear from you next.
Good evening. So my name is Noelita Lugo. I'm an Indigenous Latina, and I'm running for school board because I really want to see every child have a real chance at success in the classroom and in life. What I mean by that is we need public schools that build from the unique strengths that every single child brings into the school and brings into the classroom. And we need to dream big for all children rather than kind of lowering the bar or segregating students. We see this happening in our own city, in our own district this year, 2020, and it has to stop. We have to make it better. As my eldest son entered 2nd grade, so this was in 2018, I began to realize that our experience in AISD was not necessarily everyone's experience. And again, what I mean by that is our campus administration at the time was pushing families with students who needed to access special education services, pushing those families out of our campus, out of our community. Beyond that, I was hearing from more and more families within our community about, the amount of months or years that they were waiting and advocating for their children to receive assessments or 504 or EPs. And then as my youngest son entered kinder last year, we were really blessed to have a teacher for him that was that had special education experience. And I really think that that was a godsend in many ways. Just really quickly, the majority of my campaign team identifies as parents with students with disabilities and exceptionalities, and having them be part of my team has been incredibly invaluable as I continue to unlearn ableism that I've kind of grown up with, and that I think is pervasive in our society. And again, we must and can do better.